I have him up on. I'll have him up on the thing. Hello. Do you have a second camera? Did you want to use that? Or
A second camera?
Or did you want me to just put you on? Did you want me to put you on the screen?
Well, I'm streaming as well,
Yeah.
so I mean it's up to you. I've never really done a political debate live on Twitch like this before.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see how this goes. But for now, yeah, maybe we could just do voice. I'm assuming you're streaming too, and
Yeah.
just go from there.
Okay.
So, okay. Well, to kick it off, I have no idea who you are.
Okay.
I've never met you. I've never seen any of your stuff. I just,
Yep.
when you replied to me last night, like I was just telling my own chat here, I was about halfway into a case of beer, exchanging some blows with, a random dude on Twitter, as you do. And you replied, and I noticed your Twitch URL, and so I clicked it.
Yep.
Realized that, you're a partner channel, similar size. And I figured, what the hell, like if I mean, in terms of about the same amount of followers, about the same amount of views on Twitch anyway. And I figured, what the hell? Let's open a discussion if you're willing, because at first glance it seems pretty obvious that you and we're not going to agree on much. But I'm always open to having discussions and trying to talk about stuff and not necessarily agree to disagree, but understand why we disagree.
Sure.
So we can kind of go from there,
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, for my viewers, it's GrimisS or GrimisS? How do you
GrimisS. Yeah.
GrimisS, okay. Not to be confused with Grims, who does DayZ content. I don't know what you got going on. Looks like Halo or Doom. I'm actual Jake. I do politics. Lefty streamer. So yeah, and so I see that you're a fan of a particular fella,
James Lindsay.
James Lindsay, and I'm interested because not only is he incredibly wrong about a lot of stuff, but he's really, really good at the grift of like making money off of being wrong. And like I see that you bought in, like you retweet his stuff, and like I don't blame you. It sounds intuitive when he says words and stuff. Like when he makes the argument like the left is saying 2 + 2 = 5, and then you have some mathematicians that say like, well, I mean, yeah, technically 2 + 2 can equal 5, and you just get lost in the woods there. But really, he's like, he's got this like anti-woke thing going on, and I want to know what you think woke is. Or you can, well, you were going to say something. You can say that too.
So, yeah, I mean, I think James spends too much time on Twitter,
Okay.
And I will definitely concede that he takes certain arguments too far just for the sake of arguing. And I feel like over the last year or so, since I've been paying attention to his Twitter anyway, he's gotten a little better about that, but he still just needs to know when to just let things go. He's one of those people that clearly has to have the last word, and I can relate to that. I kind of have the same sort of stubbornness, but certain arguments I don't really care. I mean, the whole math thing is just sort of been amusing to pay attention to it. But the real reason that I care about that guy, and to kind of circle back to your question about what I think woke is,
Sure.
Woke in general, I guess you could say, is the way I would describe it anyway, is sort of an overcorrection, overcorrection of political correctness. I think it's taking certain aspects of progress too far to the point where they're doing more harm than good, or worse yet, you're actually circling back to a problem that you originally set out to solve in the first place. And there's different levels of this. I mean, it's not just this black and white thing. I think there's a spectrum here.
I'd love an example of progress that's gone too far.
Well, I think when you start to impede on the ideas of meritocracy and best person for the job, particularly when you come to...
There's a fundamental misunderstanding there. Because I can assure you that nobody on the left thinks that someone that is good at something shouldn't be the one that we go, that person's good at that. Like, I use this example a lot when we talk to people that disagree. It's not about equality of outcome, which would be the whole there's no meritocracy thing. No matter how much I try, I'm never going to be LeBron James. That dude is going to be the best. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't just like argue him out of being the greatest right now, right? It's not a thing. You can challenge it, but it's not going to happen. You recognize meritocracy. Recognizing hierarchy is part of it. Recognizing when it's fine. When it's fine, someone is like for instance, if you own a bakery and you're just a really good ass baker and you have employees, you know the stuff. You are the baker that knows how to bake the breads. Everybody else is just sort of helping you along. There's no reason for them to be considered the head baker because it's not true. It's just not a thing. And it's not what anybody on the left argues for. What people on the left argue for is, hey, isn't it fucked up that by circumstance of birth you are disadvantaged from the very beginning? We should do what we can to mitigate that. Not get rid of it because it's impossible or unlikely to mitigate.
But we're not talking about people on the left. We're talking about woke. And when I talk about woke, I'm talking about fringe.
You'd consider
I'm talking
me woke.
about the
James considers me woke. Explicitly, he has told me this.
Right on. How
and he won't debate. That's okay.
Well, maybe he just doesn't think you're worth his time.
Of course not. Because once he says, "Hey, I won't debate," and I'm like, "Well, I do this pretty professionally. It bought me a house." He goes, "Well, now you need X amount of followers." So someone with X amount of followers comes up, and then he's like, "Well, you don't have a PhD." And someone with a PhD comes up. "Well, you're not a best-selling author." And then someone with a best-selling author comes up. We've literally tracked this all the way through. I mean, you could just plain say the guy's a fucking pussy, and that's fine. Like, I mean,
I don't know him. I like the hoax papers. I like a lot of the stuff that he says. I think he clocks things pretty well, and that's my opinion of it. This whole his refusal to debate or his excuses of why he won't debate certain people, I'm not really interested in that as a conversation. I kind of wanted to talk about...
it's got the same energy as that cop who was like, "I'll fight any of you," and then a bunch of people were like, "Okay, let's fight," and then he fucking balked at it. Come on, bro.
I don't know what
you don't know that
is.
Okay, well, that went pretty viral for a while, but anyway, same energy.
I don't have 167,000 tweets like you do. I'm not attached at the hip to Twitter. Oh. And that's by design. I think it's really dangerous to be that plugged into all the bullshit that's on social media. I think it really warps your head and changes your view of reality because you get so focused on anecdotal shit like what you just mentioned.
Wait, what's anecdotal? I have studies that back up a lot of the things that I feel strongly about.
Well, you just mentioned this cop, I'm supposed to know this one instance where something went horribly wrong. I
don't know, you're a streamer. I figured you're on the internet. This is what you do.
I'm on the internet in so much as, I use the internet when I stream, but when I'm not streaming, I'll browse occasionally. I'm not live tweeting.
Well, either way,
pretty much my entire existence, day in, day out, like you apparently do. And I'm not trying to knock you. That's just an observation.
I definitely do not. Last night, in the middle of the night, was definitely an occasion where I go hard. But I mean, I don't know, just replying to people.
167,000 tweets is a lot, dude. That's probably the most I've ever seen.
Over 10 years. That's 16K a year. That's not bad. I think you guys just need to get your numbers up. Anyway,
I don't know. I think it's I'm going out of town tomorrow, and sure. I think I spend too much time on the internet myself, and I really do try to bring that down to levels that
I don't know, man,
that don't affect me in a negative way, because we're really
sure. But do you make your living on the internet?
Yeah, my wife and I both stream full time and do the cosplay thing. We have a few things that we do full time from home on the internet, and it's been that way in my life for about 5 years now.
Yeah, so I've been doing it for 10. You should get on Twitter more. It's where you can connect with people, or Gab.
I think I'm on Twitter as much as I need to be.
Anyway, yeah, it feels like I don't know. It feels like you kids and your devices, or worse, a virtue signal of like,
No, I
I'm
just
not
think
on
there's.
the internet very much. It's like, okay, well,
I
I mean, I don't.
I think I have a pretty good balance. I think I have a pretty good balance. I'm on there every day, but I'm not.
I tend
Maybe
to.
a dozen. I'll
Sure.
post maybe a dozen times one day, or I won't, or maybe I'll go 2-3 days without posting anything sometimes, and
Okay.
that's week by week about my interaction with it. I'm on there a lot. I observe things, but I don't.
All
I
right.
don't enter the arena and engage with people,
I
and
can
I
tell.
don't retweet every reply so that I can mob everyone on top of what I'm trying to say, and
Mm.
that kind of stuff. It just doesn't lead anywhere good. I think when I see something like that, that's someone who's clearly out of balance. They're spending too much time. Too much of anything is bad, especially when it comes to Twitter these days.
Mm. I think too much James Lindsay is bad.
Well, I agree. Too much of anything is bad.
Yeah.
And I when I see somebody that stands on one side and only shouts at the other, and that's all that they do,
Only
I feel
shouts at
I
the
feel
other. I have.
yeah, just stand on the left, shout at the right, stand on the right, shout at the left. I mean,
Well, I mean, okay,
that kind of
so
thing.
again, like you're kind of just like virtue signaling right now. But like, what I really want to know is like, what do you think is
How
woke?
so?
Like, let's talk about. Well, okay, I mean, it's just a virtue signal. It literally serves no other purpose than to say you think you have a virtuous quality.
No, I'm not. I'm
You
saying I
literally-
think it's. I'm saying I think it's
Okay.
bad, and it's
right.
bad to get out of balance to the point where you're
Right. You think
You're
it's a
so
you think it's a
one-sided that-
virtue to have balance. I agree. You are virtuous. It's fine. You can do that. It's
I'm not-
okay.
That's not a virtue signal.
It 100%
That's
is definitionally that, but it's okay. It doesn't matter if you. It doesn't matter.
I think I just
it's
struck a
irrelevant.
nerve because you're one of those people that stands on one side and screams at the other, and that's all you seem to do.
It's-
I mean, I don't know.
You
I'm only
definitely-
going off of what I've seen of you so far. But from
it's
what
not-
I can tell, that's what you dedicate your existence to. These
No,
days,
it's not
anyway.
striking a nerve. It's 8:15, and you've been talking about how much Twitter use is happening. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not interesting. I don't care.
That's one of the things.
You
talked
could
about,
literally
yeah.
be a brain in a vat that only knows Twitter, and I would be much more interested in what we had a discussion about. So
Why?
because
Why would
that-
you? Why
that's
would you
the
want to talk
point.
to someone that lives on Twitter? What value could
Oh my
that person
God.
bring to you? Okay. Fine. Let's get back to the woke.
What
thing.
do you think woke is?
I think woke is. I think woke is fringe left. I think that's far left stuff. I think that's
Okay,
people
so when I say
who taken a. Let me finish.
okay,
I think when I'm talking about the far side, the ones that really, classify as fringe and are on that end of the spectrum, you're talking about people that approach nearly everything in their life, if not everything in their life, with a narrative of oppressor versus oppressed, and how can I cold read that into what's
Okay.
happening?
so one of the things you said was you don't think there's systemic racism.
I don't. I think we're a post-systemically racist country. Absolutely. I mean, there's
interesting.
no denying that, and there's a difference there.
Okay, I would love to know the difference between being
So you rewind.
formerly racist and now we're not racist.
I think there are still echoes of systemic racism that exists on, say, like an economical level. I don't think it's a societal thing anymore. I don't think it has been for a while.
So you don't think?
I don't think it's in people's minds and hearts like it was
You
50, 60 years ago. And it's not to the point where you could call it systemic, and hasn't been for, I'd say, 20, 30 years at this point.
20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So 20 years after black people were allowed home loans legally.
So you're talking about like the red line communities and the restrictions on the banks so that they have to have fair lending practices and the audits
Well,
around
yeah,
that.
that would be one
sort
of them.
thing. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, do you know how we structure the country? Like literally from a baseline, it's quite literally systemically racist.
Where's your evidence for that? There's no evidence of that.
Okay, I mean, here we go.
I've been reading a.
No, I
have
would
you
love
read
to.
Thomas Sowell's book, Discrimination?
Have you read Fire and a Cane Break by Laura Wexler? Are we going to go with how many books we've read? No, of course not.
No, I was going to ask you about one book, and because it talks specifically about this, and it gives a lot of evidence about it.
Okay, so I'm going to give you evidence as a person with a history degree in American history specifically. So the specific case of American systemic racism, you can start at any point. obviously there will be chattel slavery that we can start with slavery, and then some people will roll their eyes. Well, I didn't have anything to do with that. Of course not, me either. And you shouldn't feel guilt about that, by the way. There's white guilt isn't really a big thing. I know that narrative gets pushed around on the right towards the left. It's not really a thing. We don't just sit around and like prostrate ourselves. That's liberals, not leftists. Leftists understand like fucking how this shit works. Liberals are like, well, let me talk nice and it'll all fix itself. It won't. So once you move past the point and you start gaining rights as a black person in the United States, as a descendant of slaves, you initially don't have, until the Civil Rights Act in the 60s, you don't have access to pretty much anything at an illegal standard. You don't have things like I said, home loans. You don't have insurance. You don't have marriage rights. You don't have property rights. You certainly don't have access to college. You don't have access to higher education. So when you start there and you go, okay, so how do we structure the country? What's the baseline structure of a country? The baseline structure is small communities around the country in many states, usually rural, but they can be suburban and urban, right? So how do you start that community? What's like a fundamental aspect of a community? Probably housing, probably a little bit of infrastructure. And then most importantly, almost always, schooling. Do you know how we determine funding for schooling?
Good call, baby bird. Good call.
Let's back up a second because
Okay.
I want to talk. You mentioned systemic racism, and you're trying to give you're wanting to give me evidence that
of the system being inherently racist. Yes.
Yeah, and I think you're getting into the weeds here and how communities are set up.
It's 100% not in the weeds. This is absolutely I'm telling you. No.
I'm talking about what people manifest with their behavior. I'm not talking about
that. That is social racism, not systemic racism.
Systemic racism would imply that it's in every aspect of our life.
Yes, it is, and I'm going to tell you how it is.
It can't be systemic racism if it's not a societal thing.
It's part of the literal system under which the country is founded. What do you think systemic means?
It was.
Only people who think about stuff? That's systemic?
No, it affects every
Okay, so do you
agree? Body.
Yes, I agree. Yes, so we agree on what systemic means.
So you don't think societal racism is
I think it also
exists.
exists. No, I think it also exists, but I'm telling you what systemic racism is.
So you changed your mind about that? Do you think that societal racism exists today or not?
Yes, 100%, but it's irrelevant to the point. We're not talking about societal racism.
To the point where it would bring us to systemic racism in the United States.
No, systemic racism causes societal racism. And I'm explaining that. Do you know how we fund schools?
Do
you know how we fund a public school?
I don't find this relevant to the.
Okay, so you don't have to know. It was more of a rhetorical question because I will answer the question for you. The answer to the question, how do we fund schools, is property taxes. Do you find any problem, systemically speaking, in that black individuals weren't allowed home loans until the mid-'60s in regards to how we fund schools? Can you imagine why there might be an issue when those two things are connected?
Of course, but that's not.
Okay, so what's the issue?
That's not the world we live in anymore, and it hasn't been for decades.
Okay, so we'll get there, but
we're not in a systemic racist. Like you're rewinding the clock to try and.
I'm rewinding the clock to when your parents were fucking in their teens when black people got home loans. How long is a home loan? How long is the average home loan? You own your home? Do you know the average length of a home loan?
30 years.
30 years. Okay.
Give or take.
So 1995 is the first year the average black person that got a home loan paid their home off. 1995. Surge is out. Dunkaroos exist. We got Snap bracelets and boy bands. That's when black people paid off their first home loan. And you don't think, systemically speaking, that would have any repercussions on the education system in black communities?
We don't, what you're talking about something that's 25, 30 years ago.
Now it's 25, 30. Okay, yes, 25, 30 years ago. How old are you? No, listen. No, I know. I know. It's going to be great. You're going to learn so much. How old are you?
Change the subject.
How old are you? It's not the I'm not changing the subject, bro.
I'm 37.
Okay, and I'm 32. Okay, we're not that far off. So you said 25, 30 years ago, 30 years ago, no big deal. Okay, in 1995, how old am I? Fucking 7 years old? When I'm 7 years old, the first generation of black people in America pay off their homes. First generation homeowners. Not
necessarily.
Not,
Under
30th generation. No, not you.
That's not the first time black people paid off their houses in the 90s.
Paid off their
that's
home
the
loans?
First time,
they were allowed home
the first
loans.
Time you're talking about the tail end of a 30-year loan on a home.
Yes.
From a point where lending practices were arguably finally fair. That's the point. That's what you're stretching this to. Black
yes, I know, right? Wouldn't it be from the point black people were allowed loans is when we should judge on whether or not they had systemic fairness?
Like, you're not even making a point here. You're taking this arbitrary
how do you not
point
think,
in time.
Hold on. How do you
and stacking it against a 30-year loan?
It's not an arbitrary point in time.
Yeah, it is.
What?
Because
do you want me to give you the exact date? The Civil Rights Act of 1964, July 2nd? That's the exact date. It's not arbitrary. It's the exact date.
Right.
It outlaws discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin.
Are you suggesting no black person owned a home before that or something?
I'm suggesting they couldn't
Where are you going with this?
No, I'm suggesting that they didn't have home loans before that.
Fair home loans.
Any home loans.
You're talking about something that resembles a fair lending practice amortized at the end of the loan and putting it in context of a date that wasn't that long ago. And where are you going with this?
It's amazing that you can't figure out the point. So what is the problem with tying education to home property values? What is the problem? Do you see a problem there?
No, I want to know what the problem is related to systemic racism. Like, how does this tie in with societal racism?
I promise you, if you just humor me, you'll find the
Well, then stop asking stupid questions.
It's
and just
not
say
a
what you're
stupid
gonna
question. I feel like you're scared to just entertain this. Don't be scared of like losing in front of your 13 viewers or whatever you got. 22. Like don't be scared of that. Like, just follow me down the hole. Just like I'll answer your questions.
I'm trying to listen to you, but you keep asking rhetorical questions.
It's not a rhetorical question. I genuinely want you to identify the problem between property taxes and tying that to the way we fund schools. Do you see a problem with that? Do you see any possible issue that could arise?
I have never really thought about this.
Okay, good, because I know you haven't, and this is the point. No, but you should care because you are, I'm assuming, someone that likes America and Americans and wants America to be dope.
I guess.
I
don't know.
I think you
probably think
what?
You probably think I'm some right-wing nut job guy.
No, I don't. No, I think
who just wants any excuse to shit on somebody that votes Democrat.
Nope.
And that's what the context of everything you're saying feels like.
Well, that's
wrong.
Where
you're coming from.
You're projecting is what it is, because I don't care about the Democrats at all.
That's the way it's coming across to me.
Okay,
the way you're talking to me, you're speaking to me as if you're speaking to
someone
some patriotic, right-wing nut job.
No, I'm talking to you as someone who has clearly not thought about the idea. So the problem between tying property taxes to school funding specifically is if you have a poor community, that school will be funded less. And then it just cascades. So what happens when you have, as you said, predatory loans on black communities before the Civil Rights Act? What would happen? They would have poor schools due to the fact that their homeowning situation was fucked. After they got the Civil Rights Act in 1964, which was only 30 years before 1995, like we talked about.
A point you love to keep coming back to.
Yes, because it's important. It's important.
It's not important.
It is important because the first generation of black Americans with any familial...
You said that already.
No, I didn't. The first generation of black Americans with familial wealth is in the 90s. That's the first generation.
According to this one example,
according to literal history and economics. What are you going to argue? Do you have like a study out there that shows me the average wage of an African American in the United States was anywhere summary to that of a white American prior to 1964? Do you have that information?
White Americans aren't at the top. They're not they're the highest. Like, why Do you nitpick this by every single group identity, every race,
What?
every class? Like, why,
Okay, only
why are you focused on
okay,
people
first
of
of all,
color?
first of all, class consciousness is important, and second of all, I'm focused on specifically Black Americans because they didn't have rights till 1964, which is important because that's part of the systemic racism.
That systemic racism that existed up until like 60 years ago.
Wait. So you think when we signed you think on July 2nd, 1964, people stopped racism? That racism ended.
No, I didn't say that.
You just said racism ended 60 years ago. What do you mean by that?
That's when we took that step, and it was an important step. Don't get me wrong, and it didn't flick off overnight. Of course I'm not suggesting
on what day did we beat racism?
There isn't a day. You just got upset about being asked to make an anecdotal.
It's not anecdotal.
Date.
It's not. Wait. What part of?
Now you're flipping around and doing the same thing.
What part of that is anecdotal? No. Explain what anecdotal means.
I told you 20 to 30 years ago, we reached a point where I don't think you could really call.
And do you find that anything? Do you find that not anecdotal? When you go, I personally believe 20 to 30 years ago we stopped being racist. That's not anecdotal.
There's other people that believe this too, and it'd be nice if you could.
Okay, a lot of people believe
like a maniac.
A lot of people believe in Jesus Christ. Does that make it true? Not necessarily. A lot of people believe in Buddha. Are we going to go by popular vote on whether or not something is true? Because, by the way, popular vote is against you in this regard. No one really believes that we beat racism 20 to 30 years. When Fresh Prince of Bel-Air went on the air, you're like, well,
I don't know
they got
how
it
to
now.
Talk to someone that you're obsessed with this one stupid example that doesn't prove anything. I'm talking about America being a post-systemic racist country today.
Yes. And
I tried to get about today. You're bringing up shit from 60 years ago.
Nope.
And then
we were literally
30 years into the 90s.
We were literally crawling forward. So here's the next step in that. If you want to follow me through that. So 30 years old, and most familial wealth you didn't pay off your first home until 1995. So you and I are peers with Black individuals that didn't know quality schooling, most likely, if they had a segregated community. Most likely.
I don't know why you can't get off this. I'm trying to talk about.
I know you don't know why. Do you understand?
Give me examples of today.
Yes.
That back up systemic racism as a claim. Give me examples from today, or even from the last 10 years, the last decade.
The last decade of systemic racism. Okay.
Yeah. Where's the evidence? Where's the patterns, the behavior, the statistics? Where's the proof that people of color are held down and don't get the same opportunities as everyone else in this country?
Okay.
Recent examples. Recent example.
Okay, a 2-year study published in 2016 showed that people that have Black-sounding names get hired at a lower rate, even though their qualifications are similar. A study, a 2-year study.
I saw that debunked as well, and
I saw a different
take on because it was first name and last name, and there were all these different nuanced examples, and so you're generalizing that study to make it sound worse than it was.
No, literally not.
It also had to do with people that sounded poor instead of people that sounded Black, and there were other
African American and Asian job applicants.
That's not an example. That's not sufficient. I've seen that. I know what you're talking about.
The actual study. I think if anybody,
Thomas Sowell's book is from 18 months ago, and that go read that. The book I mentioned, Discrimination and Disparities.
Wait. So your response is no. Your source doesn't work.
This is going nowhere.
What are you talking about?
You're not convincing me. You don't have examples because they don't exist.
I literally had. I just gave you an example that is peer-reviewed study. At the University of Toronto and Stanford, do you have any?
I've seen that. I've seen that. Okay, and I've seen people debunk it.
What do you mean you've seen people debunk it? It doesn't have a problem with it at all.
You're acting like it's proof that Black people are discriminated against, and it's not. It's proof that that hiring practices
not just Black people
aren't perfect, and that
ethnic minorities
choices get made based on names because it's usually has way more to do with if the person is poor.
Systemic
that has
racism.
Nothing to do with
Okay,
No,
so
it doesn't
okay,
have to
so
do
do you
with the
think?
color of
Okay,
your
okay,
skin.
okay, really? So do you think?
You're
Okay,
reading a name on a piece of paper.
right? You read. I know, and if you read the name Tyrone Wallace, Yi Zhang Yi, and Jerry Kramer, you're probably if you are a white guy, there is shown bias that you will likely hire the guy named Jerry Kramer if all things are equal.
I've seen this study, and
You
it doesn't
apparently
convince
didn't
me.
read the
Because
fucking one word of it.
The first name, I can't remember the details.
Of course
It's
you
been a
can't
few
remember
years
it. You
since I
didn't
looked at
read it.
I did read it, but it's
You
fucking 3 years
100%
ago.
did.
You just said it's not. And when I did read it, it had different examples because they ran it both on first name, they ran it on last name, they ran it based on multiple things, and you're generalizing that into black people didn't get as many callbacks, therefore racism. And that's stupid. That's not a conclusion. You're just talking out of your ass.
That's not
What? That's your comeback to that?
That's not a. That's
What?
I'm just surprised that you just are incapable of looking at a study that disagrees with you and going, I wonder if there's any merit in that. And instead, what you did is you go, that's been debunked by people. Read this book. Guess what? That book's been debunked 30 times. That book's been debunked by 30 times. I will name each and every one of them. Each and every one of them.
Hey, maybe you go read that book.
It has been debunked.
It's been totally again, debunked. and we'll circle back and talk more about it. You want to just put a pin in that for now because this isn't going to go anywhere.
I don't have to put a pin in it. What are you talking about? What I say?
You haven't read that book.
30 minutes in. 30 minutes in, and I said that you were going to bail out once I asked you hard questions.
Because you're not asking me hard questions.
What the fuck?
You're asking stupid questions that are relevant and meant to change the subject because you don't have an actual answer.
It's not changing the subject. I'm telling you the systemic issue.
And your evidence is a study that I read a few years ago.
It's not a study that you need to read. You don't even need to read a study. You could just intuit this.
You have not read the book that I've just asked you to read.
Arguably, the past decade, there have been many examples of people hired to fill diversity quotas instead of merit. That seems to go against the study. That would seem to go against the study if you had fucking just the flattest brain ever. Yeah, that would seem the case.
Would you to people in my chat now instead of me?
Would you like? Well, you're not engaging with me, so I might as well engage with waffles.
I can't engage if you keep dodging the actual question. You don't have evidence of modern systemic racism.
Yes, I do. You just don't like the evidence. Do you want evidence? Do you want to hear the evidence?
It doesn't prove anything.
It does if you just shut the fuck up and listen for 2 seconds. It literally will illuminate you. You will be like, "Oh my god, holy shit!"
It's not the same as evidence of systemic racism.
I know. That's why I didn't give you evidence of any racism. I gave you evidence that there is a literal bias within our hiring practices. There's a literal bias within our literal school systems. There's a bias. There's a bias in fucking home lending. There's a bias so deep down that so deep down that it causes a myriad of issues that you don't want to listen to.
Can't seem to see it.
I just can't see
so deep down. Must be just too deep down to see, I guess.
No, I'm literally illuminating it to you right now.
You don't have any real evidence.
I do. I'm telling you right now. No, do you want to listen?
You mentioned one study.
Would you like to listen?
That's bullshit that I've seen.
Would you like to listen?
What else have you got?
Would you like to listen?
I don't know.
Studies show that black individuals who are committed who commit the same crime go away for longer. Yes, multiple studies. There's not even just one. There's like dozens of that study. There's dozens of studies.
I've seen that study too. And
you've seen that one study that I just said there's dozens of?
Yeah, I do remember that because they don't take into consideration the previous record of those people.
Record. Interesting.
The previous criminal record, so that they get longer sentences because they committed crimes before.
No.
That's a caveat for that specific study.
No, it isn't a caviat for this specific study. It isn't a caveat for the specific study because there's dozens of those studies, and it's an amalgam of multiple studies, and if there is a problem in one of the studies where it says, hey, they didn't take into account this, what happens is another person goes in and goes, okay, so we're going to change the parameters so that we do account for that. And guess what still happens? You still find that black individuals go to prison for longer sentences for the same crimes, even with similar or exactly the same records as white or even Mexican or Asian individuals. The studies are there. It's just not debatable.
It is absolutely debatable.
It's.
What are you talking about? I just gave you a reason why that study doesn't prove your point, and now you're just saying no. There's more, and they did take that into effect. And okay, well, send them to me, and I'll look at them. But I've seen those studies that make those conclusions that you're talking about. I'm fairly confident. The ones that
so
you're
not
talking
interested
about,
in peer-reviewed studies. So we'll go back.
Past criminal record.
We'll go back.
Which.
What do you think? What do you think an issue is with? So I'm assuming you also don't think like that. For instance, black people's reports on their interactions with the police. You probably don't believe those. You don't think that they experience racism at the hands of police, or you don't.
No. I do.
I
do. I think police brutality is a huge problem.
Okay.
And I agree that.
Do you think
and
that
I
that
agree
is caused by anything? Maybe part of the system. Maybe systemically speaking.
No. I think it's people who. I think it's people who want to have power and control over others, and people who should be weeded out by hiring practices that go for things like power and a badge and a gun. And it is an issue. And there is proof that in certain situations, not necessarily the ones where people die or get shot, but where there's arrests and there's confrontation where people are injured or hurt, and that definitely happens a little bit more with people of color. It's not a big difference, but it is there. And I agree with that.
And it's a huge difference.
It's not perfect. No, it's not. It's there, but it's not a big difference. That's not true. But it is there, and I agree. And it's not perfect. And we do have a police brutality problem. But I hate that the police brutality problem is so often conflated automatically with racism, because those are two separate things. And they don't always go together.
No, it's not. So it's because
you think cops don't beat people up unless they're also racist?
No. What? Did I say that?
Is that what you're?
No.
That's what it sounded like.
Well, that's because you're stupid, apparently, because you weren't.
No, it's because I said
if
you conflate. Okay.
You just said, what do you mean? This blah 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 blah. No, I didn't say that. Do you want to know what I will say? Do you want to hold on a second before I'm right?
You haven't been right yet, so please.
I haven't been right yet? I mean, I'm literally right about all of the systemic things I talked about.
In your own head, maybe.
Okay, do you want to change the definition of systemic? Do you mean just like interpersonal people? You mean like I don't think a bunch of people are racists. Is that what you think systemic racism is?
No, I think systemic racism, like I said, is racism that is infected in every level of our society.
Okay, yeah. So yes. So but when I give you an example of this, okay, but you didn't let me finish my example.
Well, I'm a little annoyed. You keep calling me stupid and saying bullshit, and this is going nowhere. I'm honestly just
gonna bail.
I think we should probably bail. This isn't gonna get better. Let's agree.
I think it's going just fine for me.
Well, it's because this is all you do. You spew negativity and vitriol.
It's not negativity. What are you talking about? What I want you to do?
Stand on the left and shout at the other side.
No, I don't. What I want you to do, I asked you questions, and then when I asked you questions that you thought were difficult or that confused you, you got upset at me. Like when I asked you, how do we fund schools? You got upset because you didn't know the answer to that question, and you got very uncomfortable with me.
I got upset because it's not related.
It's 100%.
And your attempt to try and show how it was related was...
I didn't even finish because you got butt mad because you're a cry bitch. Like, just listen. If you just want to listen,
if you want to just insult people, you're talking to the wrong guy. All right.
All you gotta do.
You obviously don't know what you're talking about. You rely on bullshit that gets debunked.
What bullshit? Debunk.
You don't
debunk any of it. Go ahead.
Racism.
Are you just really uncomfortable with the idea that you're complicit in racism?
I'm not complicit.
You're 100% complicit in racism.
You can't say that. You don't know fucking anything about me.
You
don't speak for people of color.
I don't have to.
You're just another dipshit on the internet. Like you don't.
Wait a second. I thought we weren't gonna insult each other. That's okay. I can get over it. I'm a man. I could deal with that. So, do you want an? Do you want some?
Sound like one.
I don't sound like a man. What do you have?
No, you sound like You sound like something else entirely. You sound like a scared little kid that hasn't grown up. You talk like this entitled little child that just wants to just like throw a tantrum and make assertions, not back them up.
Sure.
And
do you want me to back them up? Because I would love
corner you on it. When people corner you on it,
you didn't corner me on anything. What are you talking about? I asked you questions. You got mad at me.
Down and corner it. You just You just say you're stupid, you're a crybaby, you're a bitch. You just resort to this
because you are literally, when I asked you a question, you literally go, well, I don't want to talk about this. Like, you literally threw a tantrum.
I told you what I wanted to talk about.
And we are talking about it. It's just you have a fundamental misunderstanding of the topic at hand.
We don't live in a systemically racist nation. That's what I wanted to talk about. And you haven't proven anything to the contrary.
I absolutely can, but you have to listen and answer questions and talk.
40 minutes.
You really haven't. You listened for about the first 4 minutes.
About home loans from the 60s. That's your proof.
Yeah, dude, it's not. It doesn't have to be proof. It's just one aspect of it. It's just it's really easy to illustrate.
No, it doesn't illustrate anything. It illustrates
what are you talking
the way
about?
things were.
No, it illustrates the way things are today. Yes, it does.
It doesn't say anything about today.
Do you want me to explain it to you? I will walk you through it.
You can't explain it to me.
I can. All you got to do is listen. You ready?
Isn't real.
Are you ready?
All right.
I got you, bro. I have you. We got you right here. We could talk about this. You got a half hour left.
Googling shit from some site. Like
I don't have to Google anything. I'm just talking to you.
No, you're insulting me. You're wasting my time. That's what you're doing.
I don't feel like I'm wasting your time. I feel like you're going to learn a lot if you just
look. And I know that you want this conversation to keep going because you get off on this stupid shit. But
you honestly, offered.
I did, and I've given you 45 minutes.
And you told me an hour 15.
It is. You have. I thought you were going to be smarter. I really just thought this was going to go better. I thought you were going to be, willing to concede things and give and take. But okay.
It didn't take long, so give me something to concede on. Give me something to concede on because you haven't made a point. All you said is your study is bad. Your point is the thesis of your argument, dude. That's not a point. That's just repeating what you think is true. That is not an argument. Saying I don't believe X when that's what we're arguing about is not a fucking argument. You don't have
proof. Why would I believe something you can't prove?
Because I'm going to prove it to you, but you have to walk with me down this fucking conversation. You can't just shout it down because it made you uncomfortable when you didn't know the answer to my question.
If you can't prove it in 45 minutes, you're not going to prove it at all. You don't have proof.
I could have proven it to you in 10 minutes, but you got upset when I asked you how home loans work. Like, you got visibly uncomfortable.
I used to sell mortgages. I know how mortgages work.
You got visibly uncomfortable when I asked you how we fund schools. Like, I'm watching your stream right now, dude. You got very uncomfortable. So all I'm asking
because I knew that this conversation was going to go the wrong way. Because you're going to try and change the subject and make these.
It's not that I'm not changing.
Leaps to try
I'm really not.
You're dodging the question.
I'm not dodging the question. I'm telling, dude. I don't know why you are. Look, if I say to you, hey, I'm going to set up a time with you in good faith at 8 p.m. so we can talk about that. Do you think that I just want to come in here and not communicate that with you? Because I'm still fucking trying, even though you're trying to bail out. I am still saying, hey, if we just have this conversation, you'll see where I'm going with it. Because you have to start from a historical lens to talk about systemic anything. It's like talking about the fucking 96 Bulls and not talking about before that. Like, do you get sports references?
Weird analogy. Of course, I know what the
Bulls were in the 90s. You're a bro like me. So, of course, you have to understand how that roster was built, where that came from. You have to know where Michael Jordan came from. You have to know the development there. You have to know the history with the Pistons and the Bad Boys to craft that story to make it make sense. So what I'm telling you is, even though 1987, Michael Jordan, okay, he's not the guy that wins 1996 championships, but it's still relevant to the story. So all I'm doing is giving you fucking context, dude, and I don't know why you're mad against context. I am giving you the context of why the systemic racism in America is there. It's built into the system, and it does oppress people, and we can do things to fix that. And it not only oppresses black people, just because it's sort of targeted towards black people because of the way it was designed, it affects white families and Asian families and Mexican families for the same reasons all the time.
Sure. Hey, I never once said that we have reached this perfect world where there's no oppression, there's no unfair prejudice or anything like that. I said specifically that it's not a systemic issue anymore, and it hasn't been for a while. However, and I stand by that.
Okay.
But you've done nothing to change my mind on that. And you don't have proof of that.
Because
where's your proof of that? Where are all the people of color that have been held back? Where's your evidence of that?
What?
Where's your evidence of the systemic racism and its
I'm literally getting to that, but you keep stopping me when I bring up the point.
You've been getting to it for a fucking hour, and I don't have any more time to give you.
You have actually 25 minutes.
I have until 6:15 at the latest if this conversation was going well, and it's not going well. It's not annoyed me.
It could absolutely go well if you just like.
I'm tired of giving you chances. Seriously, let's just. I'm done, dude. You don't have evidence.
Wait. Do we have?
Feel free to tweet it at me. Feel free to send it to me, and I'll honestly look at it. I really will.
No,
I really will. If you have something other than those two BS studies, because I don't think you do. I don't think you have anything other than shit like that.
What the fuck are you talking about? I'm not going to send it to you on Twitter. You don't nearly tweet enough.
Of course not, because you don't have it.
You virtue signaled that plenty.
No, because you don't have it. You can take this cheap shot you're trying right now.
It's not a cheap shot.
You don't get on Twitter. Why would I do it on Twitter?
It's not a cheap shot. It was a joke about virtues. Anyway, because you think that it's like, I don't know, again, a virtue not to be.
Is this really all you do? Like, you just get in arguments like this with people and just try to, I don't know.
No, usually the people I talk to are a little foldier in the brain area. And usually we can have a conversation, but you got mad when I asked you how fucking schools work. Like,
God, you really think that was some sort of a pivotal moment in the conversation?
It really, dude. I could go back and watch this again. The second I asked you that, you didn't know the answer. You got uncomfortable and you go, I don't want to talk about this. That's literally
it's irrelevant.
It's not
irrelevant. But I could tell you're going to go and try and make some obscure point on something that
it's not obscure though. Just because you don't understand something doesn't mean it's irrelevant.
How does it relate to systemic racism existing today? You haven't shown me that.
I absolutely can. So the systemic racism exists because the first generation of people that didn't have this hang-up, that didn't have to go through any of this, were people that are younger than you and I. People that are younger than you and I are the first generation of Black Americans that haven't had to deal with unfair home lending practices. They haven't had to deal with schools being underfunded, and that's just not even the majority. I'm saying a minority of the minority is the first generation that doesn't have to deal with this. And you don't find any problem with the idea that until like 20 years ago, until 30 years ago, people that are younger than us, that was the first generation of people that had a stable community to grow up in. You don't have.
Say I didn't have a problem with that.
So how is that not
I never
systemic?
Said I didn't have a problem.
Okay. But beyond that, and then you get to areas where that hasn't been able to be fixed because there was too high a concentration of people that, say, for instance, lived in projects where they don't have as much property tax because the homes are cheaper. So now you have second, third, fourth, fifth generation people that are living in low income housing where the schools are literally informed by income. It only cascades downward. And if people have low education, it means they have fewer opportunities from a systemic basis by the happenstance of their birth. Not because they didn't work hard, but literally because the only schools that they were literally allowed to go to in the public area around them were underfunded. And if you don't have any opportunities for education, what do? You tend to turn to crime, especially in high population areas. And what happens? Everybody always likes to go like, hey, look, Chicago or something like that. And then if you have to turn to crime, what do? You send police there. And if you know that poverty causes crime, and you know that crime causes policing, you're going to have a higher population of police. And if you have kids, you might notice that, like, when you watch them more, you see them fuck up more often. Did you know that if you police
these communities that you're referencing make up a very small part of our country? And the people that you're talking about, like that don't get the same opportunities, no society has ever manifested equally by region. That's never happened before.
14% of the population overwhelmingly experiences negative systemic factors.
Who and what?
According to literally every economic, socioeconomic, or fucking social science, like social working statistic out there. Like it's undeniable.
The book I told you at the start of this.
Except one book named by a guy named Tom. Or if you look at literally the statistics from the Department of Human Services. From the Department of Human Services. If you look at
who Thomas Cole is.
If it doesn't matter who he is.
It does matter. It absolutely matters who he is.
Do you know who Laura Wexler is?
Years old.
Do you
who lived through civil rights and understands this?
Dude,
He's a 90-year-old black guy who's a statistician and an American economist.
Okay, and there are 91-year-old black guy statisticians that disagree with him. Should I cite that one token? Yes, there are. There are literally there. What you think he's the only black 90-year-old statistician? Is this really? Is this you just tokenized a black guy and you don't think there's any racism?
I'm trying to tell you who he is because you clearly don't fucking know, which is.
Well, I thought you guys weren't. I thought you guys.
How you don't know who that guy is?
I thought you guys weren't.
You don't know who that guy is.
I thought you guys weren't for identity politics.
He's one of the most respected guys on this topic out there, and he just happens to be a person of color, and you don't even fucking know who he is. That blows my mind. Honestly.
I didn't know I shouldn't know.
Speaking about this stuff.
I didn't know I didn't know we had to know every black guy's name that agrees with GrimisS on the internet.
That's not what I said, but nice job laughing at your own joke. That's sick, dude.
Yeah, bro.
All right, well, I'm gonna leave now.
I know.
I hope you read Discrimination and Disparities because
I hope you talk to a black person about their experience in America. Just pick any two. Any two black people and be like, hey.
Two people is all it takes for you to declare it systemic, right?
I would prefer you talk to more. I would prefer you talk to more. But literally, if you just talk to people and go, hey, what's your lived experience in this world? And they'll go, okay, well, let me tell you about this.
Lived experience doesn't create systemic racism. It creates anecdotal, singular experience.
Okay, but if the entire population, if you want to debate someone on this, Destiny will usually debate it. I mean, if you want to debate Destiny, you're going to get your shit kicked in even harder, dude. He's not going to deal with your bullshit on this.
I know who he is, and I honestly just I don't listen.
Yeah, I know Destiny.
I don't really.
He's not.
Yeah, I don't really.
I
used to like him.
And then you started disagreeing.
Once Trump got elected, he just got too focused on that, and I get why. But
Donald Trump sucks. Why would you be excited about that?
I agree with you.
Yeah, too focused on a peril in our country that we should really focus on as a political streamer. How could you? What? Of course.
There's way more things to talk about in this country than Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And Destiny used to have
I didn't bring up Donald Trump until you did just now.
Well,
I do this all the time. I barely talk about Donald Trump.
I was talking about Destiny specifically, and why I unfollowed him. I mean, not that he cares. He's a big streamer. He's obviously very successful and everything, but I don't know.
Dude, you're not equipped.
I don't know how you and Destiny and people do this shit day in day out. It would make me such a miserable asshole, and to the point where I hysterically laugh at my own jokes after making non-points. And
sounds like a virtue signal, friend.
Hey, you'd know. I mean,
have I virtue signaled at all one time?
That's your shtick, right?
Have I told you that you're a bad guy for something, or it makes me better for
You've used a lot of insults. I mean,
are insults virtue signals? Do you even know what that means?
You just asked about a personal attack. You just asked about that. So I was just.
Oh, so you think virtue signals are personal attacks?
They go with them sometimes, but.
What is
no? It's not the same thing.
I don't think you know what we're talking about here. Okay, so
cool.
I think what you need to do is before you talk to anybody about, you need to nut one out. You need to come in with post-nut clarity, like your boy, and I think you need to just let someone ask you questions and have it back and forth, and you can ask questions too, dude. No, look at him.
He
hung up.
I don't know. I really thought something good possibly might come out of it, but I'm not gonna let some douchebag just hurl insults at me anymore. I know it's frustrating for you guys.
It's gonna block
God,
me.
what a miserable existence to just do this shit day in and day out. Tweet 167,000 times and just fuck, man. Stuff like this is what is why we planned this trip this weekend and why we're heading up north. Unplug, get away from this crap. Even for a day.
Look at this guy.
So, anyway.
I don't think he knows that he's doing a cope stream now. Hey, will all my
I
viewers...
have a hockey game to get to.
Well,
I got some new skates to break
hey,
in.
hey, viewers, leave real quick. Hold on, let's look at his chat.
So I'm going to go focus on that.
Can I read the chat? Can I see who's member? Oh, yeah.
So I
Users in
listened to
chat.
him. I listened to him for an hour. and
Mine.
I just couldn't do it
Mine.
anymore. It was making me dumber.
Mine.
So.
Mine.
Yeah, he
Mine.
can go back. That guy can go do this shit day in and day out.
I was saying. Anyway.
And enjoy being, a miserable guy that laughs at his own jokes. I'm gonna go do something else. I'll see you guys later. I don't know.
All right. I guess that was... Sorry. That was me being miserable. Oof. Bro, I just don't understand, man. I don't understand, bro. What the cope? The fucking cope, dude.